girls. And from all of the research that we've done, we know that helping our girls to keep active, to find a sport that they enjoy and love is really, really crucial to helping them feel good about themselves and also to grow their confidence through their teen years. The second point is that we want to show them role models, female role models that they can really inspire to be like, and to show them over 100 different sports, to show them the variety of the different sports that are out there, because we feel very passionately that if you can't see her, you can't be her. And I think a lot of us will agree that the visibility of women's sport across so many different types of sports is not where it needs to be. And we want to be those voices of change. And the third point is that we want to talk about the topics that are really important to you all. So, as part of this community, we've listened to what you guys are really interested in hearing from us. So, we've been covering these topics within our Wellness Month, and we've got a whole host of things that we want to cover after this as well. So, from talking about periods and how that might affect your fitness or times at school, through to talking about teen nutrition and eating disorders, which are all part of Wellness Month. So, we're so delighted that you've joined our little community, and we're really pleased to have two expert speakers with us this evening. So without further ado, just a final point on questions. Actually, I'm sure tonight is going to generate a lot of really interesting and fascinating questions. So please pop them into the chat box, and Caroline and I together are going to tag team to get through as many of them at the end of the session as we can. So if something comes into your mind that you're dying to ask Claudine or Kate, please put it in the chat box and we will come to it at the end. So I'm going to pass over to Caroline, and she is going to introduce you to our speakers this evening.
Thank you, Jo. Let me just check I'm not on mute. No, I'm not on mute. So we have got two fantastic speakers tonight. Kate Shilland, give us a wave, Kate. And Claudine Thornhill, give us a wave. So let me just introduce you to both of them. I'm just going to read off my script, so bear with me a second. So Claudine is an award-winning and Forbes-featured naturopathic nutritional therapist, wellness coach, and founder of her own nutrition business, which supports women to eat well, feel well, and live fully. And that was one of the things that attracted me to Claudine when I was looking for nutritionists. Was her website was just full of very positive messages about a very holistic view of women in general. Through her one-to-one programs, wellness events, and speaking on nutrition and wellness, Claudine supports women in general throughout their entire life, really. So from the teen years through to early adulthood, right through to menopause. We are going to send out both speakers' details tomorrow. So if you do need any nutritional help, either for your teen or for you as a parent or caregiver or teacher or coach, you'll be able to get in touch with Claudine. What underpins and drives Claudine's work is her fundamental belief that health and wellness is a key foundation for greatness, joyful, wholehearted living, and realizing our true potential. I mean, I just think that's a great sentence in itself. Claudine has been working with Red January this month. If you don't know about Red January, that's about staying active for your mental health. And we are delighted that she spared the time and her expertise to come and talk to us tonight. And then on to the lovely Kate. So Kate is a registered sports nutritionist with a master's degree in sports nutrition and a BSc in sports science and psychology. She has over 9 years experience of working with athletes across all levels, from recreational to professional, helping them to understand the link between nutrition, health, and performance. Kate's current roles include performance nutritionist at Crystal Palace Football Club Academy, the Bird Dance College, Blackheath and Bromley Harriers, and then she also has some private work as well. Kate has a particular interest in working with young athletes, as it's so important to establish good long-term eating habits from a young age to support growth as well as performance. So as Jo said, we have had some questions already, and we're going to incorporate those into this evening. But if we could just ask you to stay on mute and pop your questions in the chat box, and we'll come to those at the end if they're not answered already. Okay, so we're going to dive straight in. The numbers are definitely creeping up, so that's positive. So Claudine, if you could kick off and just talk to us about how we should be eating day to day as a family, when we're cooking family meals, what should that plate look like? Sort of let's go back to basics and just talk about that to kick off.
Yeah, sure. And hi to everyone who's joined. I'm really, really pleased to be here. So yes, I can take that question. I did prepare some slides just to set some groundwork and the foundation. So if technology is on my side, I shall...
I've just allowed you to share, so.
Okay, all right. So let me share the presentation and I'll share my screen. But what I thought it'd be useful to do is just take even more of a step back and talk about, sorry, technical issues, but talk about what food is essentially, just so we get that kind of understanding. So food is information essentially. It's information that plays an impact in terms of our gene expression and how our genes kind of operate and maneuver in our body. So it actually plays a role in switching genes on and off, and that's what we mean when we say gene expression. So whether your diet is supporting optimal health and wellness or not is really quite key. I'm going to leave the slides because they're not cooperating with me at the moment, but I still go through the information. But yeah, so it's really important for optimizing our gene wellness and gene health, and looking at supporting our body from a cellular basis, based on the basis of our DNA. Secondly, it's a form of energy and fuel, which most people know about. So we think about calories in and calories out, and our food is fundamental to that. So ensuring that we are eating enough to support us, both from a perspective of the activities we want to take part in our day-to-day life. So whether it is training and sports, whether it is our education and supporting our optimal brain health, but also just those automatic processes that go in our body, from our heartbeat to our digestive system, which actually takes up a lot of our energy. It's also the biological foundation for our health as well. So what we eat, on the basis of going back to that gene expression and supporting our DNA and our cellular health, also plays a major impact in supporting our long-term health. So it can have an effect on pain management, mood and anxiety, digestive health and things like that. And I think what it all comes down to is that food can be used as a preventative measure when we're looking at our healthcare. And the approach that we would take as nutritional therapists is using food as medicine. So that's kind of setting the foundation. And in terms of actually getting back to basics of the foods that we should be including, so I'll talk a little bit about the food groups and then how we can actually use that on a day-to-day basis. So we have our carbohydrates, which are, and I say they are starchy carbohydrates. So those are things like our bread and our pasta, potatoes, and those kind of root vegetables, but also whole grain foods as well. And the reason why we want to include those, and I know that carbohydrates can be a bit, or it historically have been a bit vilified, but actually we want to ensure that we include all of the food groups. And the reason why we want to include carbohydrates is primarily because our body uses them as a fuel source. The body uses fat as well, but carbohydrates are a really efficient fuel source for our body to be using. So when we're thinking about training and exercise, carbohydrates really need to be in there. And what I emphasize with clients when I talk about carbohydrates is actually making sure that we include a variety of carbs. So, people tend to stick to bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, and those are the main things we go for, but actually widening that out a little bit. So we include other grains apart from wheat. So we can include things like spelt, which people tend to find actually doesn't bloat them as much as wheat can, rye, and those types of grains, more what we would call ancient grains, as well as widening on our starchy carbohydrates. So the pumpkins, the butternut squashes, the parsnips and things like that. So that's our carbs, really important for our energy levels. We also have proteins as well. So that can be animal protein or plant proteins. So meat, fish, poultry and things like that, as well as beans and pulses. We also have our vegetables. So we want to include a range of fruit and vegetables. And, vegetables are something so simple, but they are really, really it's highly beneficial just because of the nutrient density in them. So when we say nutrient dense, we mean that you're getting a real bang for your buck. So you're getting a range of nutrients in there, vitamins and minerals, but really low calorie payoff, basically. So, you know, it's really hard to overdo it when it comes to vegetables. But also they play a key role in supporting us foundationally. Those chemicals that are in fruits and vegetables are really key to supporting processes that go on, processes that go in on our body as well. And then we have our healthy fats, really, really key for women's health, and really key for teenage women's health. So fats are, hormones are made up of fats and proteins. So ensuring that we take in healthy fats is really, really key to supporting young girls through transitioning into having their periods and maturation as well. So we've got carbohydrates, proteins, fats, fruits and vegetables. Dairy products are another food group as well. If you're vegan, you might not have those and you may go for dairy alternatives. Really good source of calcium, but you can also include calcium from dark green leafy vegetables as well if you are vegan or you don't have dairy products. So those are the food groups. And other things we want to think about in there as well as water, which is so key to our overall health and well-being. You know, all of the chemical processes that take place in our body take place in a water solution. So ensuring that, again, just coming back to the foundations, that we're taking in enough water to support our energy levels, but also to support us from a cellular health perspective is really, really important. So when we're thinking about actually how we can use those food groups practically, a good foundation to start with, and which is what I advise all of my clients to go for, is when you're looking at a plate of food, you want to divide up your plate into 3 parts. So the first half, you would want your vegetables. That should be a range of colours, maybe a slight emphasis on the dark green leafy vegetables, just because of the benefits in terms of supporting what our body does naturally, but supporting the process of detoxification and fibre and all of the nutrients that are in there. So half a plate of vegetables, range of colour and variety, a quarter of a plate of your carbohydrates, again, getting in a variety there, but also watching the portion of that carbohydrate, and then a quarter of a plate of protein, like I said, animal or plant-based protein. If you're going for animal protein, just ensuring that it is as high quality as you can go for. So less of the processed meat, such as the processed sausages and things like that, but more, really good quality meat like chicken breasts and things like that. So that's a really good foundation to start with. And then being sure to include our healthy fats in that through cooking and through, what we might dress our vegetables with and things like that.
So can I just ask, could you give us an example of a healthy fat?
Yeah, so they come in the form, so nuts and seeds are really a good option for healthy fats, whatever nuts or whatever seeds you go for. Or oils, so I think a good way to distinguish healthy fats from less healthy fats are, healthy fats tend to be runny at room temperature. So things like olive oil, avocado oil, those types of things. And coconut oil is a bit of an exception. And they tend to be plant oils as well. So again, coming back to the olive oil and avocado oil and things like that. Those are your healthy fats. So avocados, coconut oil can be included in there. Olives, nuts, seeds, those types of things.
Great. And so as we've got our daughters and students and etc. who are going into their teenage years, do we need to adapt that plate in any way to encompass the changes that their bodies are going through and that their minds are going through, hormones, etc.?
Yeah. I think that's a good place to start in terms of the hormones. So, when a young girl is transitioning into starting her periods, there is that period of adjustment in the beginning, really. The body is having all these hormones kind of starting to circulate that weren't there before. So, the body's trying to accommodate that and adjust for that. So one thing to be mindful of is that in the early years, the period could be maybe a bit irregular, a bit erratic, and there may be a few more symptoms that come along with it, such as maybe cramping and heavy bleeding and things like that. So that's something to be aware of, and allowing time for that to settle. And I know, sometimes and also there might be skin issues as well. And sometimes there can be temptation to go to the doctor and get some medication for it. And that is understandable if it is something that is really causing, issues in day-to-day life, but understanding also that potentially will settle, after the body kind of gets used to the hormones that are coming in and out. But to support that, some of the things that I would advise is sugar. So we really want to ensure that we limit our sugars, particularly refined sugars. And when I say refined sugars, I mean sugars that have been extracted from a food source, such as cane or beetroot or something like that, and you just got the pure sugar there. And the reason why we want to do that is because of the hormone balance again. So insulin responds to sugar coming into our body. Insulin is a hormone in itself. And because insulin is so key for our energy levels, our body will prioritize using insulin for our energy. But the other hormones also work in response to insulin as well. So hormones work very synergistically and they respond to one another. So whereas one is high, one may go lower and that type of thing. So if we have a high sugar diet and a lot of insulin is being produced, the other hormones such as estrogen and progesterone and those types of things that are keeping our hormones balanced, they may be thrown off by a high level of insulin. So keeping the sugar within reason. I know it's hard to avoid and it can be a comfort, but yeah, keeping the sugar to a minimum where we can.
Amazing. I never knew that. I didn't know that about how it could impact your sort of estrogen and progesterone levels.
Yeah. And to be honest, any woman that I'm working with where she's looking at hormonal balance, looking at the blood sugar balance is something that I would always start off with. Also, we want to look at our fats as well. So trying to avoid the saturated fats, and those are the fats that mainly come from animal sources, and they tend to become harder at room temperature. So if you think about when you're cooking meat and it kind of solidifies when it goes into room temperature, things like butter and things like that. Butter within context can actually be quite good. But yeah, reducing the saturated fats, again, because they can throw off the hormones and also link to kind of the weight gain and cardiovascular health issues and things like that. But conversely, we want to increase our healthy fats. Again, going back to the point that hormones are made of fats and also made of protein as well. Also, if there are issues around clotting, pain, those kind of issues, healthy fats can be anti-inflammatory. So if we are reducing down any kind of inflammation, that can really be helpful for like I said, any cramping or pain or anything like that. And also I would say dairy. Dairy can be linked to inflammation as well. So if someone is finding that they are dealing with a lot of pain, also skin issues like acne and oily skin and things like that, if someone is dealing with those kind of issues, they might want to look at reducing down the dairy as well, because that can be a factor. We always hear a lot about iron and the importance of iron for menstruating women, so ensuring that we are getting a good amount of iron in. And I would encourage women to kind of periodically be tested for their iron levels, just to make sure that they are at the right range, because sometimes the low energy and fatigue and even low mood can be linked to just a deficiency in iron. And also
sorry, Claudine, is that a simple test that you can just go to the doctor and request?
Yeah. So if you went to the doctor and you said that you were dealing with low energy, fatigue, and you weren't, and it was something that was ongoing, the doctor would be likely to do an iron test. He may also test, which I was going to go on to, he may also test for B12 as well, which is really key for energy levels. So just getting in the range of B vitamins as well to support the body's energy levels, because imagine, again, we're going through those hormonal changes, a lot is going on internally, so we want to make sure that we are fueling our body in the right way to support the activity that's going on. So the B vitamins, particularly that come through whole grain foods, can be really key as well.
That's fascinating. I mean, I kind of wish I'd known all this years ago. Just what you were saying then about supplements. So I suppose some people might call me stubborn. I like to think my diet is, really good and it's full of all the right things. And I've always been a little bit reluctant to delve into the world of supplements. Because I think the diet's okay, but as I've just proved by serving my children fish fingers tonight, it probably isn't. But also, it's so complicated. Like, I don't really know. I'm looking at you both. I don't really know where to begin. So how would you, suggest people embark on that sort of journey into the supplement world? Because I mean, I'm, a mother and I'm totally confused. So if you've got teenage hormones going on as well.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm working with clients one-to-one, I generally I think I have the same approach of addressing health issues through the diet first. The supplements are complementary to a balanced diet. So if you want to get more benefit, supplements can be, like I said, complementary to a balanced diet. So I'd always start from that premise. If someone is entering into kind of just looking at supplements, I think as a starting point, and if you're not working with a health professional, a good quality multivitamin can always be helpful. And again, that complements a balanced diet because, in terms of the way that the soil that our food is grown in, there is talk around the soil being depleted of vitamins and minerals that would have been present maybe 50 years ago. So a multivitamin can be quite helpful for that and will support a number of processes. In terms of brands, I guess I don't know if this is a space to promote particular brands, but I would say looking at the labels of supplements. So you want to be sure that, just like with food products, that there aren't too many additives in there. So sometimes products can have bulking agents and things like that, which mean you're getting the less of the nutrient and more stuff that you don't want. So looking at the brands you're going for. Some ones I can mention off the top of my head are brands like Wild Nutrition, Higher Nature, Cytoplan, and I can send these through to you if people are interested in looking at those brands.
That's
so
great.
multivitamins are quite good. Fish oils are quite good, just because, again, we tend to not eat enough oily fish. Fish oils are quite good, and like I said, anti-inflammatory. Probiotics in some cases can be quite good as well, because there is a tendency for people to be low on the gut bacteria, so probiotics can be a good standard to have.
That's great. I mean, Joe and I were talking this. Sorry, Joe's made a good point about vitamin D, and it's something that I raised with Kate this morning. Sorry, Kate, did you want to say something else?
I was just going to say, actually, yes, a couple of things. Sorry, but firstly, vitamin D, and as Claudine said, it's always best to take a food first approach. I aim to get all your nutrients from your diet first is always what we'd recommend. But there are gaps, and particularly with young people and young active people, sometimes it's hard to actually, fill in all those gaps with food. So there can be situations where actually we do need to support that through supplements. For young people in sport, it's always essential that your supplement you're taking is regulated by Informed Sport. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to share my screen. If not, I'll send it across on the slides tomorrow. But it's vital that your supplements that you take have been batch tested to ensure that they're safe for safe use in sports, both for health and for sort of competing purposes. But the sort of exception to the rule of food first is vitamin D, like you were just saying. It's almost impossible to get enough vitamin D from our diets, and in the UK we don't get enough sunlight. So the recommendation is that we all supplement in the winter months, so from October to April, adults and children, 10 microunits every day. Now, the most recent research looks at the sort of how efficient your supplements are, how much of that supplement do you actually absorb. A lot of supplements just end up being sort of expensive urine, they just go straight through you, your body doesn't absorb them. So the sort of best availability, if you get your vitamin D in a spray form, an oral spray, so it gets absorbed directly through into the bloodstream through the mucous membranes. So you've got a better idea of what you're taking in, and that's something that I think is very important for all of our young athletes to be taking. It supports obviously bone health, which is essential for young athletes. In these years, about 80 to 90% of your bone density is developed and determined by the age of 18 or 19, I think it is, I can't quite remember. So, and vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium. So it's super important. It's also been shown to be really supportive in muscle mass and strength, plus anti-inflammatory role, good for digestive health, good for helping the brain produce serotonin. It's like the sunshine vitamin. Sorry, I've interrupted, Claudine. I haven't even said hi yet to
No,
everyone.
that's
But
fine.
they're the things that are really important. And yes, as Claudine said, iron. Best to try and aim for increasing in your food first. But we have the UK does a diet and nutrition survey. You look at, it's our surveillance method of understanding the quality of our diets. And the last data showed that actually 46% of 11 to 18-year-old girls don't have enough iron in their diets. And I think this trend of sort of vegan and vegetarian diets as well is if which is all very well and good, and that's fine, and I support that. But you have to be well informed about it. Often we make these choices about our diets because it's trendy or someone else's, and we don't. We need to make sure that we've got the right information or access to the right information before we start sort of cutting things out of diet. Because I'm very much about what we need to add in, well, make sure we've got the good things in rather than what we're taking out.
Yeah.
Just that's really important. The informed sport. I'll send the logo out on the group tomorrow because that's
Yeah.
something that, and for me,
That's really important.
I wouldn't recommend anything other than that.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And I hadn't even thought of that when I brought up supplements. So thanks for that, Kate. But anyway, let's hand over to you anyway. Let's hand over to you anyway, and we'll talk about. Sorry, Kate.
I'll just checking Claudine had finished.
No, I totally support what you're saying. I guess one thing I would add is for darker skinned people as well. I know, Kate, you said to take it in the winter months. I would say darker skinned people, I'd advise to take it all year round, just because of the greater need.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kate, we've sort of heard about, Claudine's given us a brilliant rundown of what a plate should look like. I've learned something already. I've learned lots of things already. But how does it apply? How do we take that plate of food and apply it to a sporty teenage girl? Okay. What do we need to tweak and change so that it fits what she's doing?
Okay. Firstly, it's so lovely that there's so many people interested in this because nutrition's so often overlooked, and it's really great that we're doing this together. So Claudine doing the health side and me doing the performance side, because actually you can't even start to think about performance until you've got the health bit nailed. So we need to build on those really awesome health foundations, and then the performance can build on top of that. So I would say, we need to do the basics to an elite level. So that's like Claudine was saying, get our macronutrients right, our carbs, our proteins, our fats, and our colours, and our hydration. Sleep also super important, and then we can start tweaking things around training. And I think that it's so often overlooked, and every sports club has a coach that is trying to determine what the athlete gets out of their body, but we overlook what we're putting into our body in order to be able to get that out. And actually, in order to optimize your performance in sport through both actually performance but enjoyment and longevity in it, you really need to consider your nutrition as a key part of your training, because you do get out what you put in. So it's vital that we understand that. And you're going to think that Claude and I are both on the carb commission board by the end of it, but carbohydrates honestly are your key source of fuel for any athletic young lady, or anyone actually. As Claudine said, they're our primary source of fuel. They fuel our brain, our central nervous system, and our exercising muscles. But we've only got limited stores, so we have to keep topping them up. And it's vital that if we want to push ourselves to the best we can be, we need to put the fuel in the tank. It's like the petrol in your car. So, and particularly for girls, our hormonal system, like Claudine was saying, is particularly sensitive to carbohydrates. So we've got the hypothalamic pituitary axis, and that seems to be very sensitive to carbs. So it can impact on our reproductive hormones. So the key thing is understanding actually quite how much we need to take on board. I think the common theme often is young athletes aren't eating enough, and where that leap goes from what a plate looks like for a normal teen, I don't know what a normal teen is, but a less active teen. Actually, when you've got an active teen, you've not only got all those energy needs for growth, the changes going in your body, your brain to function, your energy you need to socialize, all those other bits, but you've also then got that additional energy expenditure you need for training, and then to recover from your training. So it's really key. So if you're not putting enough in, there's gonna be a deficit somewhere, and your body's going to pay the price for that. And often what we can see is if we've got not enough energy coming in, you increase your risk of illness, you increase your risk of injury, and also you can delay the onset of your periods, because in order to menstruate, your body needs an additional source of energy to function and do that function. So first off, oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
I still can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this might sound like an obvious question, but what are the signs that you're not taking on enough? Is it that you literally are lacking energy, or are there other physical signs that parents and teachers can look out for?
So there are common signs if you're not eating enough, and it's hard because it can be also kind of misconstrued as just normal teenage behaviour. So tiredness, fatigue, moodiness, but maybe more than your normal teenage angst, just feeling a bit low. Also in your performance in sport, and I know it's tricky at the moment because we're not all competing against each other, but if you're normally at the front of the pack and you're finding yourself lagging behind, or even if you're training on your own and something that would normally, if you're going for a run and you'd normally be able to breeze through it, but you're struggling a bit, that can be a sign that actually there's not enough fuel coming in. Or if you're achy after training, and that's a sign again that you've not given your body enough fuel to actually repair and recover. Cravings, appetite, a really good way of just identifying whether actually you are missing out on something. Our bodies are pretty good at telling us what we need, and I know there's a question on periods later, which we're going to come on to, but also certain stages of the cycle, your energy requirements actually do go up, your BMR changes. So often people say, oh, I've been such a pig, I've been so greedy, and like it's a bad thing. But actually, that's a really good thing. You're listening to your body and you're eating more because you need more. And I think there's often this negative connotation that eating more is bad and it's greedy, but actually it's awesome. You're fueling, you're giving your body what you need. And if you want to be the best you can be in your sport, or enjoy your sport to the maximum that you want to and you can, you need to fuel that right. And in terms of sort of performance changes, and physical changes, we need two things. We need a constant sort of stimulus. So the training provides the stimulus for change, but the change only happens whether you fuel that right, either side of the training, whether that change can only be positive, if you feel that right. So every time we train, we cause sort of micro tears, damage to our muscles. It's how we then refuel after that repairs and rebuilds and builds those muscles stronger and more efficient for that sport. So, and also, like Claudine was saying about the variety of fruit and veg, that becomes even more important for an active young person or an active any age person, because as we train and we use oxygen for fuel, we cause oxidative stress on our bodies. So we need all the antioxidants to repair that. When I'm working with the much younger academy lads, I always say when you eat your fruit and veg, it's like you're eating, they put their superhero capes on and charge around your body, like killing all the baddies and doing all the fixing jobs. I don't know how to say it less patronizing to teenagers, but it's kind of what it does. So all of those things, the colours, we say eat the rainbow, you need even more to be even more aware of those things when you're active. Again, the healthy fats, so like the nuts, the seeds, avocado, oily fish, really important for reducing inflammation after exercise. Great for helping reduce DOMS, which is the achiness in your muscles you get sort of 1 to 2 days after. But also, your protein needs need to be considered. And there's, again, I'll share tomorrow when we do the follow-up, but there's a nice calculator that you can work out your protein requirements, and I'll send through a list of protein sources too, because you want to be aiming for around about, for an active young person, around about 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But that means nothing as a number. It's like, well, what does that look like? So say a chicken breast is about 25 grams of protein, an egg is about 7. So we need to make sure that we've got enough protein throughout the day, but also the way that our body can utilize that sort of to the max is if it's spread nice and evenly throughout the day. So we want to sort of punctuate our day with good intake of our carbs, our protein, our fats and our colours, but we don't want to leave big gaps in between our eating, which is often what happens with young people. And I know we're coming on to this, but if training's at awkward times of the day, sometimes young people haven't eaten since lunchtime, and then they rush straight to training after school, and then it might be, I don't know, 5-6 hours between eating and then you've trained in the middle, then eating again, by which time your fuel stores are quite depleted. And again, hydration, so important. Just encourage all of you on here, just always get into the habit of looking at the colour of your wee. Make sure it's like a light straw colour. Dehydration of only like 2% impacts on performance, both physical and mental. So you get more fatigued more quickly, you can't concentrate. And in sport, we always think about our energy needs to run and train, but actually we need to fuel our brains first and foremost. And you need that fuel for focus, for concentration. If you're in, lots of sports demand precision and accuracy. If you're doing a shot on target, more chance of getting on target if you're well fueled and your brain's on point than if your energy stores are flagging.
And that's what Richmond was talking about last week, wasn't he? So we had a talk last week, which was around injury prevention, but a lot of it was focused on general wellness. And our speaker, Richmond Stace, was talking about how important it is to sort of maintain levels of alertness and concentration and focus, because once those start lagging, that's when injuries occur. So what would you add to that, Kate, when it comes to sporting injuries? How can a diet help with sporting injuries?
Oh, for sure, it does massively. First and foremost, you just have to make sure that you've got enough energy coming in. The priority is always just meeting your energy requirements. Any deficit will then increase your risk of injury because you're not able to repair right after training. But also, like Rich was saying, it's your focus, your concentration. If you've not got enough fuel, your coordination goes slightly, your concentration goes slightly. Also, your enjoyment of it goes as well, which is like so important. I think the whole focus of this is keeping girls in sport for the long run. A lot of kids or girls drop out because it becomes less enjoyable. A lot of the time it's not enjoyable because they don't think they're doing very well. I've had quite a few clients that say, oh, I'm feeling really frustrated, I'm just not making any progress and I'm not very fit and I'm doing all this training and I'm not getting anywhere. And then actually it's nothing to do with their fitness, it's because they're not fueling right. Then you suddenly change what they're eating and they're like, oh, I'm bossing it again, I feel great, and you suddenly feel good about yourself. But often you get that plateau where, because it's misunderstood and the information about nutrition is generally really quite poor, and it's never really linked with performance, not near as much as it should be. So all these clubs, all the training you have, I don't know many clubs recreational level that have a nutritionist that will come and do something as part of a training process and help the children understand, because actually you get out what you put in, so you can't expect to get out if you don't understand what to put in. And I think people assume we know what to put in, but we don't really. So in terms of making ourselves more resilient to injury, it is ensuring our needs are being met, trying not to restrict. And I know it's tricky when you're a teenage girl and you're bombarded with social media images, and I'm happy to see that actually now it's more about being strong rather than skinny. And I think there's all this whole strong is the new pretty, and I love all that. It's actually what your body can do, and it's remarkable. And that trend for thinness is hopefully, less of a thing. But I'm very aware also that there's a lot of misinformation, and it's stressful, and there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of disordered eating habits, which is brilliant that you've got the talk next week on that, because that's not my area at all, but it's something that's very important to be aware of. So we just need to make sure that needs are being met, and girls are able to understand, because it's difficult when you're bombarded with sort of messages that are unfounded, and I think with nutrition, anyone can call themselves a nutritionist, and it's not very well regulated. And I know so many young people that are fearing carbohydrates and thinking it's a not good thing to eat. And we just need to help people sort of understand more about what their needs are. And also just the fact is, a lot of those messages are for, they say, the average person, but no one's average. You're all you, there's only one you. So what works for you is what works for you. And that's the thing I think we need to understand, how to fuel our own bodies. I'm sorry, I'm really going on.
No, that's fine. I think you've actually raised a really good point there, which I'd like both both your input on, but I think you just touched on a point where, you know, anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. What would you recommend people look for if they are looking for some help? Some, you know, after tonight, maybe they want to delve into this a little bit deeper. What sort of qualifications, just briefly, Claudine, if I come to you first, would you say that people need to look for?
I would say it's preferable if someone is a member of a professional organisation such as BANT, like the British Association for Nutritional Therapy, or the Association for Nutrition, something like that, and that they've actually studied up to either diploma level, like a 3-year diploma, or a 3 or 4 year degree level. So it's not, you know, like a 6-month course or something like that that they've done. Yeah, and most nutritionists would offer a what we call a discovery call, so you can have the opportunity to actually speak to them. And I think part of it is about, one, the nutritional therapist or nutritionist's expertise. And then secondly, it's about the relationship between the two of you as well, because it is a relationship, and that person needs to kind of understand where you're coming from, your lifestyle, and the things that you care about, but also the pressures that you have in day-to-day life when they're making their recommendations as well. So yeah, part of it is qualification, expertise, but part of it is the personal relationship as well.
Great. And Kate, have you got anything to add to that?
Same. It's the registered bodies, so the Association for Nutrition and the Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register,
Okay.
sort of the mark of the qualified competent nutritionists under those registered bodies, and it gives you a guarantee as an end user as well that your advice is regulated. There are strict codes of conduct that you have to adhere to once you're on those registers. So it gives you peace of mind as a client, and also obviously protects you as a practitioner as well, which is important.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, it's the same as like looking at the endorsements on supplements. It's so important that you can trust your source of information and what you're actually putting in your body.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to dive into the questions now that some of which we've had in advance. So thank you very much to people that emailed me earlier in the week. So the first one I know is going to be a really interesting topic, and it's to do with vegetarian diets and vegan diets. So what are the nutritional requirements for girls following those kind of diets? So Claudine, if you want to go first.
Yeah, so firstly, I would say that, because I get asked this question a lot, like, can people have a healthy vegetarian or vegan diet? Is there enough nutrients in there? And I think, like any way of eating, vegan or vegetarian diets can be balanced or imbalanced. It's all based on the approach that someone takes and the actual foods that they're eating. So what we want to avoid with a vegan or vegetarian diet is that you simply just exclude a food group such as meat and dairy and carry on eating everything else. And it's, you know, there needs to be a consideration of so the protein source, the calcium source, the vitamin D, the B vitamins, the B12s that come from meat, where are those going to come from instead of the meat and the dairy? So that's what we need to do, being mindful of not removing the whole food groups, but actually ensuring that you include the nutrients that you might be missing from those food groups. And also, I guess what I find sometimes as well is that although someone may be vegetarian or vegan, they actually don't eat a lot of vegetables, or the vegetables that they eat might maybe kind of overcooked, maybe in a sauce or something like that, or ladled with other kind of things on top. So ensuring that you are actually eating, going back to what I was saying before, a good range of fruit and vegetables as well, whether they're fresh, lightly cooked, steamed, whatever it is, but ensuring that you're getting those in as well. And I think you know, some of this is quite positive, but it also has a converse effect as well, that, you know, because vegan diets in particular are becoming a lot more popular, there is a wider range of options out there. So when you go to the supermarket, you know, you can pick up these really quick, convenient vegan foods that are processed. But then conversely, you know, there can be a reliance on those foods as well. So, and there can be an assumption sometimes that, yeah, because we are vegetarian or vegan, it's automatically healthy. And actually, if you're eating a high range of processed vegan foods, low vegetables, potentially high carb as well, sometimes people tend to rely on the carbohydrates to make them feel sorry, to make them feel full because they're not taking in the meat, those can cause issues. So ensuring that it is a balanced diet, so a good range of vegetables, you're getting in your protein sources, sources of calcium, so that can be dark green leafy vegetables. And I would also emphasize, like we said as well, just ensuring that your levels for vitamin D, B12 and iron and things like that are on point.
Can I add as well?
Sorry, yeah, go for it. Joe just had a quick question. Go, Joe.
Sure. Claudine, I was just going to ask, and Kate, you might have a view on this as well, but somebody messaged me about their teen daughter has been struggling with migraines. And I thought this was really interesting because a few years ago, I found out that I'm dairy intolerant, and dairy is actually a trigger for my migraines. And I know it's taken so long to figure that out. And so I just wondered whether you have an opinion on whether intolerance tests are good, because maybe some foods don't agree with us really. And it's taken me so long to figure that out for myself. I wondered if you had an opinion on that.
I would say that when it comes to dairy, I think that sometimes people do deal with an intolerance response to it, but maybe because that response has been there for so long, it's seen as kind of normal. So if you have kind of a mucousy feeling at the back of your throat, or, you know, obviously digestive symptoms as well, like, you know, your belly starts to run and things like that, but generally, or your skin starts to break out, you know, those can be signs that there is something going on in the diet, and potentially it could be a lactose sensitivity or intolerance. So sometimes, yeah, your body will tell you, you know, what it doesn't like or what it doesn't agree with, or yeah, and then you could move on to go and get testing to be sure. But sometimes, like I said, the warning signs can be there, but we get so used to them that we kind of think that they're normal.
Definitely.
Can I say as well, I think we have to be really careful with food intolerance tests. Sorry, and the girls chat. Because there are so many that actually they're not really worth the time or the money. You have to be really careful. So perhaps we could put on the group as well tomorrow, maybe linked to trusted ones. There are very few. There are so many that offer it, and there are very few that really give any value. I think as well, often sort of reactions to things are a sign of perhaps a compromised immune system. So I would always look at actually how to, you'll get these things that say how to boost your immune system. We can't really boost it. We have nutrients that support it, but also looking at things like our gut bacteria, so foods that can actually support our gut health, so increasing our dietary fibre, because again, the UK sort of intake of dietary fibre is much lower than it ideally should be, so increase our intake of that. Maybe some fermented foods. Also for the young people, like just like Yakults are a great. I would always say have a Yakult with breakfast. At the academy every day we have a Yakult with breakfast. It's just there, so it's just a good way to support that gut health, because actually, I mean, that's a whole nother topic as well. But that we could have a whole night of talking about that. But that underpins so much for our overall health. Our gut bacteria, we're learning more and more. The research is fascinating. But as the more we understand, the more we realise how vital it is to so many of our other health systems. And for sport as well, it's amazing. They did do fecal transplant studies, which is a bit grim, but actually the impact on performance and weight and recovery once they'd altered gut bacteria actually is quite remarkable. And
it's a really fascinating topic.
Yeah, and athletes do have a different sort of population of specific bacteria than non-athletes, which seem to be sort of predispose them to be more efficient at certain types of sport or endurance activities or recovery or respiratory fitness. It's really interesting.
That's amazing.
So I would.
Kate, can we just come back to you on the veganism as well and vegetarian diets and how that works with training?
Cool. Yeah, B12 is something like with vitamin D that we all need to supplement. B12 is essential for vegans to supplement because B12 is predominantly found in animal-based foods, so it's very, very difficult to get enough from plant-based sources. Also, I know there's a big trend for there's so many milk alternatives. Actually, a lot of them are kind of just sort of liquids. There's not a lot of them don't have much to them sort of nutrient wise, so it's really, really important that if you are changing your diet and cutting things out, you do yourself the sort of the favor of investing in your knowledge in it, because otherwise cutting out means missing out. And in terms of health and performance, that's going to have a really big negative impact. So get more into the habit of looking at labels on things. So certain plant-based milks, make sure that they're actually then enriched with calcium and B12. A lot of, if they're not, they're basically just something to go on your cereal or in your tea. Soy, and a lot of them are very low in protein. So soy milk is the best protein alternative, but it's not very high in carbs. Oat milk is good carb alternative, but it's not very high in protein. Pea milk is a great source of protein, but again, not great in carbs. So you kind of, none of them really fit the sort of nutritional profile that cow's milk does. And
Right.
so you just need to really see, okay, where are the gaps? And likewise for protein, for muscle growth and repair. So we've got our proteins are broken into amino acids, and there are certain amino acids that are essential, which means we have to get them in our diet because the body can't produce them itself. And proteins are either complete or incomplete. The complete proteins mean they contain all of those essential acids. Now, most complete proteins come from animal sources. So when you're eating plant-based proteins, you have to combine certain proteins to make sure that you build a complete protein.
I see what you mean.
So like a grain might be limited in one specific amino acid, but a bean has that one's missing. So if you put them together, then they can build a complete protein. So baked beans on toast actually is a great meal for a vegan because it provides well, actually, it's not a great meal. You need some colours with it, but so a salad on the side and some healthy fat. But in terms of protein, it builds a complete protein. But it's things like that you don't necessarily know when you decide I'm going to go vegan.
Yeah.
Which a lot of young athletes are, particularly young female athletes are, because maybe your friend is or someone else at the club is, and they've suddenly started running really well. We need to arm ourselves with that knowledge before we make those big changes.
Okay.
We're serious about our sport and obviously our health fundamentally.
Okay. Well, that's fascinating. I've never really thought about it like a sort of jigsaw puzzle of putting all the pieces together.
Again, I've got a good graphic we can share tomorrow because I think that's really, really important that people are aware of. And things like Claudine said, the calcium and the iron, and those are two minerals that a young girl's needs are particularly high in.
Okay.
In fact, a young girl's needs and athletic girls' needs for iron, because iron losses are much higher in athletic populations. You lose iron through sweat and through urine, and also through GI bleeding. So actually, up to 70% higher iron losses in athletic populations.
Okay.
And then factor in menstruation. So these are all things we need to know about.
That leads us on quite nicely to the next question, which is what can we, if I come to Claudine first, what can we consume to help with the menstrual cycle? With that in particular.
Yeah. So it all essentially comes back to kind of balancing the hormones again. So where there are issues, whether it is pain or heavy bleeding or clotting and things like that, there are certain nutrients you can include. But yeah, it would essentially come back to balancing the hormones. So some nutrients that you could include, some of them I've spoken about, are the healthy fats. So avocados, olives, nuts, seeds, those types of oils can be particularly helpful. Vitamin E in particular has been shown to help reduce clotting as well, and I've used that in clients previously.
Where can we find vitamin E? Do you mean as a supplement, or can we find it in our food?
Walnuts is actually quite a good source of vitamin E. Yeah. And then coming back to the carbs, so whole grain carbohydrates to support that stable blood sugar, those stable blood sugar levels, and also for the fiber as well. So whole grain carbs for fiber, but also vegetables are a good source of fiber as well. So that will help with any hormones basically are used by the body, and then they should be excreted out once they've been used. The fibre from whole grain carbs and from vegetables will help with that excretion of the excess hormone, as well as water and excreting it through the urine as well. So ensuring that we're getting those in so that hormones aren't hanging around in the body is quite key. Also, the water is really key for any kind of excess. Like Kate said, the body kind of does what it does in terms of detoxing and getting rid of any toxins, but supporting the body through a good amount of water and just flushing those out is really key.
And what about for athletes who are feeling unwell? What can they have to ease that stomach cramping sensation?
Yeah, so I don't know, Kate might have a different view, but I guess from a wellness perspective, I would say that there are different changes that go on throughout the menstrual cycle, so not just the bleed, but going throughout. And I would say the first point of call would be to listen to the body as a starting point. And I think it's really important that from a young age that women and girls kind of are quite aware of what their body is trying to tell them and what is going on in their body, so they can decipher what is normal for them and what isn't. So number one, I would say to listen to the body and kind of get an understanding of what is normal and what isn't. But number two, I would say is if someone, it depends on, I guess, what's going on, but if someone is feeling maybe quite nauseous and quite fatigued, I would say something that is going to be a meal that is going to be quite nutrient dense, but quite light on the digestive system. So isn't going to take a lot of work for the digestive system to process. So something like a hearty soup, vegetable soup, so you're getting the nutrients in, even a miso soup, coming back to what Kate was saying about the gut bacteria, that can be really nice. And those kind of things could be really warming, comforting, and can make you feel, well physically, but also emotionally as well.
Yeah.
From that. I would say ginger is another really good thing for if there's a bit of nausea going on. And then coming back to the anti-inflammatories, so reducing down that pain. So things like turmeric, which you can include in things like curries, or you can make what they call golden milk or turmeric lattes, and you need to include a fat in there and black pepper to help with the absorption. But yeah, turmeric, anti-inflammatory. There was another anti-inflammatory I was going to talk about. Oh yeah, pineapple as well, which is really helpful for anti-inflammatory needs, and foods with magnesium in them that will help with muscle relaxation, because sometimes it can be about spasms that are causing the pain as well. So foods with magnesium, so dark chocolate is one of them. Also something like chamomile tea, which can be quite soothing as well. So yeah, that's a quick down.
So Kate, just conscious of time, anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah, just quickly. Yeah, sorry, because it is nearly 9. But just about your hormonal, the cycle and how it impacts your appetite and your performance and just how you feel. Like the more we understand about that, the less we sort of can beat ourselves up about it. Like, so there's certain phase of the cycle. I'll just be really quick, but particularly in the middle when your progesterone's rising, that has an impact on our basal metabolic rate. It can increase our heart rate, increase our breathing rate as well, and our sweat rate. So actually we need more energy. Training feels really hard at this point. So you could feel sluggish and just not great. And we're also less efficient at using our carbohydrate as a fuel. So if you're competing or training at that point, you need to take on more carbohydrate during training because it's harder to use that from your body. So if we can be aware of these things that's going on the inside, it makes it easier to manage.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's something important. But there's an app you can get, and it's called FITR Woman, and you can track. Have you got it? And it gives you recommendations for certain nutrients at certain stages, which is actually really useful because also it makes you aware of what's going on. And sometimes training just feels really difficult, but there's a reason for it. But the key thing is throughout the whole sort of cycle that keep your carbohydrate intake optimized around your training. Don't ever train without eating anything. If you're training in the morning, and a lot of people say, oh, I haven't got time to eat before training, or it's too early. Something's always better than nothing because you put too much stress on the body if you're not having something. So even if it's just a banana, it's better than nothing.
That was me this morning at 6:30.
Naughty, no breakfast and fish fingers for tea.
I didn't have fish fingers for tea. I just gave those to the kids. Right, let's move on.
You could buy the omega-3 ones.
Okay.
Seriously.
There you go. You heard it from a nutritionist. Omega-3 fish fingers are okay. Right, back to the serious questions. So I think this is a really interesting question around protein shakes. So Kate, if I come to you first, because there's a lot of advertising around them which suggests that if you're going to be sporty and athletic and super healthy, then, you know, and we see people on TV in gyms walking around with the, you know, the plastic glass thing full of their protein shake. So you kind of end up associating it with being fit and healthy.
Yeah, and then there's that sort of fear of missing out. You think if everyone else is having it, then you too. But actually, it's perfectly easy to hit your protein requirements from food, and I'd always say, yeah, food first. But we all know that's not always practical. And there was a question, you know, there's a mum, the kids swim, they're going to and fro training, they finish late. It's not always possible to have a, you know, plate of salmon or chicken or something there ready to pick them up. And for sport, as particularly if you're training on consecutive days, it's quite important that you eat as close to finishing training as possible. So actually that's where then protein can be convenient. So it would never replace a meal. If you've got an option of having a meal or a shake, I'd always say have the meal. But actually if the option is nothing, wait till you get home, then the shake is a really convenient way to sort of bridge that gap and make sure you get the nutrients in when your body's going to be most able to utilize them. The thing though with young people, all of the shakes on the market are targeted for adults, with the exception of one. And again, I'll put it in the link tomorrow, and I've managed to get a discount code for everyone that's viewing tonight. So there's a company called Youth Sport Nutrition, and they're fantastic. And again, they've got a good app that they put through good nutrition articles, which are really interesting. But they have just developed a protein supplement specifically for young people. And it's not just protein, they've looked at the profile of, so that survey I was talking about before, when, you know, 46% of young girls had lower than recommended iron intake. They looked at all those figures and have developed a protein or sports supplement specific for young athletes. It's called Protein.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. So that is the only one that I would say, yes, go for it. But there are other things that are equally convenient, like a tub of Greek yogurt, for example, will be about 20 grams of protein, and that's portable and easy to have. So it's not the only option, but it's a good option if the other option is missing out.
Yeah.
It's a good stopgap, but it's a good way. And also, you know, if you're on the go, so in the morning on the weight training, you could add a scoop into a smoothie. So you've got your other nutrients as well. You're getting your vitamins and minerals in too, and then you can add a good protein amount into that. So I would say always opt for food first, but if you are going to find there is a gap and you're not meeting your needs, then that's the one that you want to be looking at.
Okay, so Claudine, I'm just going to move straight on to the question about, because we've had a few questions on the chat as well about things that you can eat on the go. So just for the other attendees, we had a question before tonight from a lady who's got 3 very sporty daughters who swim several times a week, several times a day even, and it's just proving to be a bit of a nightmare to make sure that they are fueled appropriately and that she can sort of take things with her to do pickups. Training is a long way away. So Kate, if I come to you first, and then Claudine, I'll come to you. What would you recommend, like, for everybody on this call, for, you know, taking children to training? What are the kind of things that we should have in a bag, in the car, that, you know, can withstand being maybe knocked around for a couple of hours, that kind of thing? What would you suggest?
Well, there's a lot of options, and it just takes a little bit of planning, but you want to be obviously having a good source of carbohydrate, good source of protein. So there's things, sort of snacky things like sorry malt loaves. Bananas are obviously great. They're not so good if they've been bashed around a bit. Wraps are great. Sandwiches, crumpets, hot cross buns, they're all a good source of carbohydrate, which is what you primarily want to be focusing on for fueling the training. But after the training, I think that one of the questions was about something more substantial. So I think everyone forgets about thermos flasks. You could put a soup, if you buy a
Yeah.
fresh soup and then you can bulk it out, add more nutrients in. So like put some peas or edamame beans or spinach or tin of tuna or something to make it more of a kind of stew than a soup, and then to put it in a thermos and have it with a roll. That's really great to have after training. There's also a company called Sport Kitchen that they make sport specific. They're kind of like a pot noodle, but a healthy version. Adam Peaty won lots of golds on them. So for
Oh,
this
wow.
for swimmers, so they're regulated for use in sports, but it's sort of astronaut food technology. It's freeze dried. It sounds grim, but you just put the hot water in, and actually nutrient wise, it's quite complete. Then and fruit also is obviously just a good portable snack.
Yeah.
Someone I was just seeing about like cereal bars. Again,
Yeah.
they're fine. Granola bars. I think there's this big sort of war on sugar, but sometimes it's about context. And if you've just done sport, we need to get sort of perspective of actually you need that sugar. We need to have some to replenish our stores. What's just been expended, and we're aiming for healthy, not perfect. So and I think that's where we need to kind of get that balance. Yes, some things are better than others, but also sometimes we can't get the best thing because it's not
Yeah.
convenient. Also things
That's
like those
great.
squeezy yogurts, those pouches are good.
Yeah. Claudine, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think those are all really good ideas, and I'd support those. I think depending on time and how much time the person has, I think fruit is a good option, and combining fruit with healthy fat and protein. So, for example, apples with peanut butter or banana with peanut butter, something like that is going to be filling, light, but also provide that energy source as well if someone's going into training. And then post training, I was thinking the same thing in terms of soups, which are going to be warm, hearty. You can add whatever you want into them to bulk them out and make them more nutritious. Something quick maybe when someone was to get home would be like a vegetable or chicken or tofu tempeh stir fry. So you can get some frozen veg, mix it in with some brown rice noodles, which don't take long to cook, and just stir fry it up and alongside your protein source, which could be really good. Eggs are another one as well. So again, if it was something to carry around, not ideal, but if you were doing a boiled egg and kind of carried that around, but also afterwards as well, and coming home making a quick veggie omelette, something like that is another good option as well. So I hope that's helpful. But
I'll tell you some of the questions. Sorry, go on, Kate.
One thing I forgot that's probably the best thing for after sport is just milk. I know we talked about milk earlier, but chocolate milk is really great for recovery. It's got the right balance of carbs to protein and also electrolytes for rehydrating. Also a bowl of cereal. Cereal's fortified with the essential vitamins and minerals that we've just been talking about. So that's always a good option as well.
So we've had a few questions through on email and on the chat tonight, which is kind of reminding us that actually we're dealing with teenagers, and we can, go on to them and try and convince them and try and persuade them that what we're telling them is right, that they need to be having more carbs or that they need an extra portion of protein. In your experience, have you come across, clients like that, and how have you managed to convince them that what you're recommending is correct? So it's kind of trying to get into their brain, and it's more sort of working on the psychology of things. Have you ever had to deal with those situations? And if you have, how have you managed that?
I would say, one thing that I always look at when I'm working with clients is understanding why they want to do something. Someone being really close to why they want to achieve something and the benefits and the payoff in terms of their longer term ambitions and goals, I think is a really good motivator. So when it comes to a teenager, I think we can provide the information, which is going to be obviously really helpful, but linking back to actually what are their aims and their ambitions, and using that as a motivation tool. And, you know, when they maybe fall off, as they maybe inevitably will, you know, just bringing them back to their why and their purpose. I would also say a good thing is to, and it might be harder, it might be easier said than done, but is to role model and lead by example as well. I think there's when it's depending on the age, there's only so much you can tell, and then sometimes it has to be you know, a demonstration from the adult in the house as well, and hopefully the teenager will follow suit. And I guess I would say as well, just being cautious around the messages that we send to our young girls, because I guess I do work with women as well, and women who have come out the other side of maybe parents who have been really kind of into them and what they eat and how they eat and when they eat. And then, you know, there tends to be a bit of kind of overthinking in adult years around that. So I would say just setting a good role model, a good foundation, giving them that knowledge and information from the outset. And like I said, linking them to their why and what they are trying to achieve and how eating well will kind of support their ambitions.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as well, it's really important to get that balance to, you know, people talk about food as good or bad, but it isn't good or bad. It's just food, and some we should eat more of and some we should eat less of. But actually, it's all important to enjoy. And I think also if you're an athlete and you're really strict about what you're eating, you've got to have a social side as well. And if you feel you're missing out on stuff, that's where then perhaps that's why the dropouts come, because actually you feel like actually this isn't everything. It's not meeting all your needs. So it's really important to find that balance. So to ensure that, yeah, you've got all the nutrients that we've been talking about, but there's still room, because actually an energy requirement of an active young teenager is vast. So there's still room, if you've got your foundations right, all the kind of essential things, there is room for manoeuvre. So, you know, we need to be able to enjoy those things that may seem more indulgent, and feel comfortable around it. Because if we don't, then I think it's potentially causes problems further down the line.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy way of looking at things. Anyway, Joe's going to tackle some of the questions that we've got in the chat. Thank you very much, everybody.
While you were just talking about, you know, food is food, and we obviously get information from every single source you can think of, whether it's through social or through the news or magazines. And again, that causes confusion for us, I think, as parents. When you talk about food and us trying to understand what's good or bad, one of the questions that came in, which I thought was really interesting as well, is when we're going back to the fact about role models, are there people on Instagram that you guys think are doing it really well and actually are really positive for us to follow because they're giving really good advice? Is there anybody that comes to mind? Claudine, Kate?
I would say actually one of my colleagues, she's a nutritional therapist as well. Her business is called Eat, Love, Move. And she does a lot around the menstrual cycle and just understanding the menstrual cycle more, what our dietary needs are around the menstrual cycle, why we might be feeling certain ways in different periods of the menstrual cycle, and how we can kind of comfort ourselves, take care of ourselves through what we're going through. So I would definitely recommend her for anybody who wants to understand more about the menstrual cycle.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we can share tomorrow a list of there's a few links that are just good. It's the evidence-based information and more sort of there's one called Fight the Fads, which I think is really important. We call them Generation Z. You've got so much bombardment of information and you think, well, how do I know whether to trust it? Because someone that's got like 10 million followers promotes it, or because that person's got a degree, like which one's more attractive? Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to sort of sift through that, but it's really important and also just to remember that there's only one you. So whoever's talking about what they're eating or whatever, that doesn't really make any difference to you because they're not you. And I think that's the thing, we're eating for ourselves. We're not comparing to anybody else. And that's easier said than done, but I think the more we kind of think about that, the better.
No, I think that's so important. Everybody is unique, and it's really good to keep talking to our girls about that. And things that I eat, might not agree with me, might give me a flare up, but doesn't have a problem for anybody else in my house. So, sometimes I need to adapt to what I eat because it's how it makes me feel. I think that's really important, and the same for the kids. Right, lots of questions coming in. So we talked a lot about vitamin D tonight, which I think is a brilliant topic. You talked about the spray, and I know you'll probably send some links to. We'll probably send links tomorrow. But is there an oral spray that you would recommend that we could just maybe get right now?
So Better You
Yeah,
is a
I'd agree.
brand that does oral spray, and it does a junior one as well if you've got any younger people, because I think it's good for all ages. So that one is one I'd recommend. Or there's one Health Span Elite, which is another sports specific one. They're the ones that I would recommend for those.
Yeah, and I'd second the Better You one as well. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And apologies if we've covered this already, but where would you recommend vegan omega sauces? Where would we go to get those?
So omega-3 sources, we could get them from walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds. They're really good. Also, algae. So something like a spirulina doesn't taste great, but you can get it in a powder form or a tablet form. That could be really good as well. Yeah, those are the ones at the top of my head. Yeah.
Brilliant. And just back to the vitamin D very quickly. If someone's going out in the sun for a few minutes in order to try and get some vitamin D, is it better to wear sunscreen or not? Is that any time of the year?
It's not, well, you can't get the vitamin. It depends on the sunscreen because they block different rays, and some of them. I think the advice is to go out without sunscreen for a short period of time. But again, then you've got concerns around the sun damage and potentially. But I think you have to be without sunscreen to get optimal vitamin D uptake. Do you know, a way to increase your vitamin D intake? Mushroom, because we grow vitamin D on our skins in response to sunlight, and mushrooms have the same component or property on their skin. So if you put your mushrooms in the sunlight, they grow vitamin D on their skin. So actually, you can get enhanced sources of vitamin D from mushrooms. In fact, some supermarkets, some of their mushrooms actually are about 50% of your daily intake on a mushroom. Also, cornflakes are a really good source of vitamin D.
Really?
Not all of them, not all. Some aren't fortified as much, but I don't know if I can say the brands, but the one with the big K is.
We're not sponsored by anybody. We're not the BBC yet.
Yeah.
And I would just add, when it comes to the vitamin D and the sun exposure, it doesn't have to be like when this, you could go out at a time of day when the sun isn't really blazing and still get the benefit from it. So yeah, you can do it in a safe way. Yeah.
Okay, next question. I'm going to try and power through these. How should we adapt our diets when we're injured or we're not able to train? It's a good question.
Christian. Less than you might think, because often people restrict their intake when they're injured because they think, well, I'm not training, so I'm not expending so much. But actually, we underestimate the body's energy requirements for repair. Some injuries, depending on the extent of the injury or how severe it is, sometimes your energy expenditure actually can go up because your body's busy trying to repair. And also, if it's you might walk, say you've got crutches, for example, you actually use up quite a lot of energy moving around. So I think it would be, if you are injured, it'd be advisable to actually find a registered nutritionist to have an independent talk to. But first thing is, don't restrict your intake. That's the biggest piece of advice, because if you're eating less than you need, your food's like Claudine said at the beginning, the food is the tools that your body needs to do the work it's trying to do. So if you haven't got the right tools, you can't do the right work. And to repair tissue, you need the right source of protein. You need vitamin C and zinc in order to help build the collagen, which is the tissue that builds your strong ligaments and supports joints. You need a sufficient amount of protein, an increased amount of protein to help build new muscle tissue. So there's a lot. You need the anti-inflammatory fats to reduce inflammation, and again, your many different colours, your antioxidants to help repair as well. So I think the first thing is, don't restrict, keep a good balanced diet, don't cut things out because you're not training as much. Get some independent, individual advice on it, specific to what the injury is, because then that can accelerate your recovery and that also make you more robust when you come back to training. So you don't want to get back to training and then you get re-injured. So it's looking at the
Brilliant. No,
long-term
thank you. That's a great answer. So this is our last question. So, and apologies if we've missed any, but we've tried to answer so many. This question is: athletes generally eat more than their peers who may be less active. What advice would you give to athletes, especially younger females, who are self-conscious about eating larger quantities of food around their friends? And we touched on this earlier, didn't we? About, sometimes we follow a little bit about what our friends are doing.
Do you want to do this one, Claudia?
I'd kind of just butt in with my little two-piece there and leave it to Kate. But I would say, going back to actually what Kate was saying in terms of our nutritional needs, depending on where we're at. So if, in terms of some of the guidelines that the government give in terms of our calorific needs and things like that, there is the advice that is given is for a range of people. So it'd be the same for a 20-year-old young woman to a 6'5", 60-year-old man. That is the advice that is given is the same nutrient recommendation. So like we said, one size does not fit all, and we need to kind of educate girls to cater to what their body needs in terms of fueling the activities that they need to be doing. So number one, fueling the body's actual processes that are going on, such as digestion, and like I said, all those automatic processes like the heartbeat and things like that, but then fueling the actual activities and making sure that we're as efficient and working as optimally as we can. So I think it goes back to maybe what I said before as well about encouraging a young girl to stay close to her why, the reasons why she's doing this, and her long-term ambitions, and reinforcing that message that we are individuals and we have our individual needs.
Yeah.
Also, I think the most important thing is knowledge and understanding. So we need to help them, sort of educate them on why they're eating what they're eating and how it supports their health and their performance and their enjoyment of it. So actually, it's great if you're an athlete and you're eating more because that's what you need. And the more they understand that's why they could then explain that to their friends if their friends are curious about it. But also in terms of body composition, if you're more athletic, muscle is metabolically active, so it burns more calories. So a muscular individual burns more calories at rest than less muscly person. So actually your needs are much greater. So again, it's I need more because I'm doing more. it's as sort of simple as that. And your appetite's greater the more you move. So yeah, I guess there is that sort of self-consciousness about it, but it's just a lack of understanding on the less athletic peers' part. If they're questioning it, then let's help them understand why and explain why you need to eat more, because that's the thing that's going to compromise your performance and your enjoyment and your sort of long-term investment in yourself in the sport.
Yeah.
If you don't sort of support it right nutritionally.
I think, supporting our girls to have a healthy relationship with food throughout their life is so important, which is also part of the reason why we're chatting about this tonight. And tomorrow we've got our last wellness event, which is on an introduction to eating disorders, which is going to be so fascinating. So if anybody is still here and is interested, if you haven't signed up already, we do have Dr. Susie Greenwood tomorrow talking about an introduction to eating disorder, which I don't know enough about. So yeah, really interested on that. But I just wanted to say it's been an absolute pleasure having you lovely ladies on the call and just getting your fascinating insights from the world of sport, nutrition, health, wellness, gut health. I think could be another session to do just itself. So there's so many sort of offshoots of this we can still talk about. But we do really, really appreciate your time tonight as our speakers, and also to everyone who's given up their evening to come on and listen to us. We're not charging anything for these events because we really want to try and use it as a growth platform to share this knowledge with everybody. But I do know that Caroline is doing her Red January, which I'm sure Claudine is delighted about. So if anybody wants to check out Caroline's fundraising link, which I'm sure she'll put in there tomorrow on the email out, please do give her a few pounds and support her, because she's training every day, which I think is brilliant. We're also going to be sending out a survey, so we'd love to get your feedback on this event. And also what's really important is what you want to see moving forward. If there's other things we haven't talked about through the whole of January that you're like, that's a massive topic, please talk about it, then do please share and be really honest. We love that. And do follow us on social media. You'll find us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. We are Girls in Sport, and our blogs are brilliant. We think they're brilliant. We interview lots of fascinating girls and women from the world of sport, and we would love for you to read the blogs and share them as much as possible, because that's how we can grow this community and get more people to understand more about these types of topics. So thank you so much, everybody, and we hope that we might see some of you on here again tomorrow evening. And enjoy the rest of your evening, what's left of it. And thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Right.